And it is here. We're going to get started. The Portland Parks and Recreation Board meeting, April 8th, 2025, time as 5:01. If we can have the roll call, please, Michelle.
Yeah. Corbin.
Present.
Ellie. Present. Casey.
Here.
Casey, FYI, we heard you very lightly, so I don't know if you want to up your mic later.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. David. Saw David still connecting to audio. So. Chris. Okay. Adrian is absent. Aaron is also absent. Sabrina's here, just not in the room. Suen. Here. Matt.
Present.
Patty. Here. Bill.
Here.
Elson. And Jessica is not here today. She's at a PPF event.
Thank you so much.
Recording in progress.
I'm going to start with public comments. Looks like we have 2 people on the list that are present. Do we have anybody online?
If you are attending and would like to give public comment online, please raise your hand. If not, then we'll just leave you as a viewer.
We have our first public comment. Kevin, come on up and have a seat. 3 minutes. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Please refrain from giving any of your personal information.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I recently moved to Portland in August. I moved to Portland mostly to play this sport called bike polo. It's a lot like hockey on bikes. I originally started playing in San Francisco. I moved to Portland because the club here is really amazing, along with the city, and it was just a really good combo for me. And so I'm here as a club member of Portland Bike Polo, which is a 501 nonprofit. And yeah, since the last time I was here, we had our first tournament of the year that we hosted and facilitated, organized, did everything. And it was really amazing to be in the park all weekend from like 8 a.m. to sundown when it went dark, basically. We had 20 teams on one court, and we played a tournament of 20 teams on one court with a total of 60 people, a lot of which of those people traveled in from the East Coast, California, Utah, New Mexico, and even some from Canada. And it was really amazing to hang out with my friends again, to see them and show them around Portland and take them to the city and play bike polo on a public park. It was really fun. It's really fun playing in Alberta Park because we get out there and we play, and like anybody who's walking around in Alberta hears us, they see us, and it's really nice exposure it's really beautiful exposure for our sport. And it was especially interesting because of the amazing weather on Saturday and then the less than amazing but still beautiful weather on Sunday. We got to play like 2 different kinds of games, really dry and sunny and hot on Saturday, and it was wet and slippery on Sunday. But overall, we had a really nice time, and we got through all of our games before the sun went down, because our court doesn't have lights. But we got through all of the games, and everyone was pleased, and we got to go party afterwards, and it was just overall a really good time. But yeah, I'm just here to stay apprised, see what's going on, meet people, and kind of make myself and Portland Bike Polo a little more out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome back.
Thank you.
And our last speaker is Michael. If you want to come on up. Go ahead and have a seat again, refrain from giving out your personal information. You can go ahead and get started when you're ready.
Hey, hey everyone again. I'm Mike Hernandez. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in front of you all. And thanks for all that you do for parks. As some of you know, I ride my bike over Mount Tabor a lot of the time during the week. But recently went up to Rocky Butte and noticed that they regraded that final climb up to the top of Rocky Butte, and I think laid down some of that red sand, and so I really appreciate that. It was really nice for being able to ride my bike up to the top and hang out and just see the beautiful view up there. And yeah, I just wanted to just kind of promote bike polo again as well. We had that tournament like Kev was saying, and we actually started raising funds. We were talking about that last month at the meeting. And Annika, who couldn't be here tonight because she's organizing a bike ride on the west side, she essentially like orchestrated a fundraiser where we made some t-shirts to sell to or at the tournament and at future tournaments. It's tournament season, obviously like the weather's looking nice, and so a lot of tournaments are gonna start happening all over. And so we have a bunch of t-shirts to sell to different tournaments all over the country. But at this tournament this past weekend, we sold almost $1,000 in t-shirts. And she did that in like 3 weeks. She had the idea. We found an artist who is actually part of Portland Bike Polo. We know a screen printer who plays bike polo as well. And so we were able to come together as a community and make this happen. And the shirts were well received. And so now I'm wearing one right now, if it wasn't obvious. And yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of all the work that she did. And yeah, just the future work that we can do as a club. There are a number of makers, including myself, in the club who can like make these sort of things happen. I make bicycle parts for people with disabilities, but can manufacture a lot of other parts that can be sold and turned into fundraising efforts for the club in order to just make our experience playing bike polo a little bit better, hopefully in the form of maybe a new court or repaving the current courts that we have. And so just wanted to kind of give you an update about what's going on with Portland Bike Polo. We're really stoked about the efforts that we're doing and just all the ideas that keep popping up and coming together as a community to try to help out as much as you can. And we just appreciate everything that you all do for the parks and giving us that that great mental space of like I'm speaking.
Thank you. Again, you're at time, but any questions from the board? I really appreciate you coming back, and it's really lovely to hear the progression. Looking forward to hearing more.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to, do we have any general announcements? Any general announcements?
So Dr. Corbin and I took the opportunity to meet with Councilor Steve Novick. And so that was a collective effort from the board, showing up at different hearing session, listening session. So waste at a time, we'll see where we can get to.
There's been quite a bit of effort from the board. Ali, thank you for testimony. Others showing up at various meetings and listening and meeting with our council members just to introduce the board, as well as speak up and out against, well, speak up for parks in these various ways. And so thank you for bringing that up, Swin. Thank you, board members, for being out and about to support parks. Any other announcements? Thank you so much. And I believe we're moving to the approval of March minutes. We have a motion for approval of the March minutes. Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussions? That's anything like that? All those in favor of approving March minutes as is, please raise your hand. And Michelle, please let us know when you are ready.
Patty, did you second to
Mhm.
move?
Yes.
I believe you were absent last month. I don't know if you're allowed to second
I
the
think
move.
you-
Wait, was I absent?
It did say that in the notes.
I know we need a different.
Where's
person
the
to
minutes?
second.
You wanted to be.
I can find it.
So we have
Shoot your
Suen,
spirit, my
and then a
spirit.
second by Ally.
Right.
Great, and all those
That's right, it was about. the
in
budget.
favor of
We got all
approving the
hands
March
on it.
minutes?
Okay,
All
I
right.
will consider all hands raised.
Wonderful. And then we have an abstention from Patty.
Yes. From Patty, because she wasn't at the budget meeting.
And do we have anybody that doesn't approve? All right, thank you so much, folks. And I believe we are moving towards director's report. Director Long, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Corbin. I wanted to take a few minutes to highlight a few changes that were announced since the last time we met and to address some of the media reports that some of you may have heard. As you will hear shortly, Parks is facing budget reductions that make difficult choices unavoidable. And one of the proposed packages included a community center closure that has received some attention and also caused some confusion. I wanted to clarify that Parks submitted a budget reduction proposal that included consideration of the closure of one of three, not all three, smaller neighborhood community centers, and those were St. John's, Montevilla, and Peninsula Park. Each of these centers costs between $600,000 and $1 million to operate annually. They tend to generate less revenue than their large community center counterparts. They offer fewer programs and serve fewer people compared to the larger regional centers. And that's why they were identified as potential reductions. And just to remind the board, although many of you were, I don't think any of you were here then, but in 2019, when we were facing similar financial challenges, we found operators for some of our other small neighborhood community centers. So the model is not unfamiliar to us. So I just wanted to clarify what you all might have been hearing out on the street. I also shared a communication with all of you regarding Pier Pool and Columbia Pool that was sent on March 26th. Mayor Wilson has directed the Bureau to pause the planned demolition of Columbia Pool. The pause is in response to encouragement and advocacy that came by way of the District 2 counselors. Just want to reiterate that this is only a pause in demolition, and we haven't made a commitment to renovate or reopen the pool, although we've received a lot of questions about what that might entail. So we're really not doing any immediate community engagement activities around that potential until there is a financially feasible way forward. So I'll keep everyone abreast on that. And then with regards to Pier Pool, we had a failed first bid on the project, and so it had to be repackaged and rebid. We did a shorter expedited bidding time, and we did have a successful bid the second time. So we've got we're riding the line on opening, but before or by swim season, but we should be open during swim season, maybe a week later from opening. And we're keeping a really close eye on that.
I'm
to
sorry,
Make
which
sure we
pool
don't
is
have too
this?
much slippage. Pier Pool.
Hmm.
But we do have the contractor on board now. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was recently I shared the news that the mayor has directed further additional changes to the organizational structure, to the city structure. And there was a lot of information in the message. I don't know if everyone got through it and whether or not it was a lot to process, but the most relevant changes to parks and the vibrant community support services is that both teams will be joining the Public Works Service Area under the leadership of DCA Priya Donapal. Deputy City Administrator Sonia Szymanski will oversee the transition as the Vibrant Community Service Area is phased out. The realignment of core services such as communications, engagement, equity, procurement, human resources, technology, and business operations will be organized into a centralized model to unify approaches across the city and reduce the footprint of city operations. And the general idea is that practitioners will remain embedded in the service areas and report to a citywide leader for their practice. So we will still have people doing procurement and IT and the like, just the structure and the reporting structure will shift. So there's that. And then as I tend to do, we've been reporting out on city council meetings. And we sent an email about 2 weeks ago of city council meetings upcoming. And when I'm done with my report, I'll also put those in the chat for folks. And then not the final thing, but the other thing I wanted to mention is that we're planning some opening events for Mill and Park Lane Park. The details are being finalized. I don't want to give you a date that might end up changing, but certainly hoping to have one in May and one in June. So be on the lookout for that. And I hope you all turn out with your t-shirts and your board lanyard. See that you're rocking it. I love it. I'm just gonna pause to see if there's any questions.
Question. With the restructuring of Parks and Rec being added to Public Works, what is the narrative around consolidating or looking for redundancy within that particular process?
Yeah, it's kind of an unknown at this point. We will be meeting with DCA, Donapal, and Szymanski to talk about the transition more broadly. You know, my sense is that generally the city is looking to reduce redundancy and find efficiencies across the board. Certainly in those areas that I just mentioned, the centralized services, that is definitely happening, and it's been a topic of conversation for several months. So I imagine that, you know, once we are folded in, there'll be some conversations about, you know, what that might look like. But there hasn't been very detailed conversations yet, on my part anyway.
And if I can follow up with 2 more questions. Oh, Ali, go ahead. Is this restructuring within the vein of budget or within the vein of just consolidating and making government smaller at this time?
It's a good question. So as a part of the charter reform, there was restructuring of practice that was going on, exercise that was going on. Todd and I were engaged in that for almost 2 years. And one of the items that they were looking at was restructuring, creating service areas. So I want to say it's both a continuation of that, and it is definitely affected by the budget situation.
Last question is regarding, are you seeing a trend in which projects are being held if they're not shovel ready or if they don't have complete money earmarked to them at this point? And so is that also in the vein of the budget? Are we seeing things put on hold?
Not yet, but there are conversations. In particular, the mayor has indicated an interest in looking at freezing SDCs for a period of time or until a certain level of housing units are attained. And so that would impact projects that are on our roster that are that have had SDC allocations, and they really run the gambit of funds allocated and no funds spent yet, funds allocated in design, et cetera. So I anticipate that will be the case, but we're not quite there yet in terms of announcing what that looks like.
It's okay.
You sure? I would, I'm gonna pass it to Todd. He has something that he wants to share.
Just wanted to share with the board that I accepted the Parks Director position in Santa Clara County, California. So sadly and excitedly for myself, I'll be leaving Portland Parks and Recreation. The last day will be April 25th. And I'll be starting down there in early May. Just wanted to thank all of you for being volunteer board members over the many years. I spent about 15 years, City of Portland, 14 of it directly supporting parks in one way or another. So I really love my work here and super appreciative to everybody. And you have a great team of parks professionals to steward your system. So thanks.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Don't forget to throw some sun our way. Just saying. Wonderful. So thank you.
Make one comment. Can we consider that as expanding our project partners out there that we can collaborate?
For sure, sharing of best practices, and now I can say whatever I want on the outside. So I'll be one of your political advocates going forward.
Well, you've been wonderful to work with, and I'm really grateful for all the help that you provided. I mean, especially to me in testimony and working
Sure.
with you, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thanks. Thanks.
Are you doing that? But glad that it's towards a good thing. Director Long,
I am
additions?
No, I wanted to keep it short and not go too far into my report because we've got a pretty long budget presentation and I anticipate we'll have lots of questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Director Long. We're going to conclude the director's report and then we're going to go to the working groups. So the Board Affairs working groups, are there any questions or comments? So much. The Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group, any comments? Any questions from the board?
No, I don't have any.
All right, saw one typo in the working group report. Apparently Jonathan Beckhardt attended your meeting. I don't believe he's on the board anymore. That might be a correction for next time.
All right.
Thank you. Financial sustainability working group.
There was no report submitted because we're kind of meeting off calendar to match the budget process. So there is a meeting on Thursday, but not in the past month.
Thank you so much, Casey. Community engagement working group. I don't have anything to report in other than what's on there. Any questions from the board? Moving to the culture, nature, and recreation.
We have, I didn't submit a report, I'll say we had our first meeting, yay, and then following up with, and Joey is gonna help us coordinate a meeting with rec and a meeting with nature, so we can kind of get acclimated since it's kind of a rebirth of that working group, so.
Wonderful. And then the group that's not on here, but Ellie, that you are heading is Harborton. Any
Yes.
report ins on that?
Yeah, so as I think everybody knows, the Harborton was passed, was pushed through. There was an appeal filed by Forest Park Conservancy and Friends of Forest Park. And that hearing is going to be on April 17th at 2 p.m. And we can testify, which is great. It wasn't clear if there's gonna be public testimony, but we can. So I know at least Matt, me and Suen will be testifying. If other folks would like to be there, this is a kind of situation where more voices, the better. And you can testify personally or as a Parks member. I can share the letter with everybody again. Before the hearing, there's going to be a rally put together by Bird Alliance of Oregon, Sierra Club Oregon, and 350 PDX at 1 p.m. asking folks to come, wear green, we'll have signs and do the, there's lots of ways of making noise. So make some noise, and then 2 o'clock, the hearing will start, Forest Park Conservancy, and we'll kind of make the case for the grounds of their appeal. My guess is that'll last about an hour. And then testimony will be allowed. So happy to have our day to be able to appeal. I think there's a good case for it, and for folks to be able to testify. So I would, I'll send around information to Michelle to send out to everybody, but it would be great to show up in force as Parks Board. I'm glad there'll be 3 of us. I hope there are 8 of us, or 10, however many of us there can be. I hope there are.
Thank you so much, Ally. And one more, the funding and levy strategy team is meeting tomorrow. So that consists of Casey, Chris, Ally, and myself. We did start off with the levy letter. Now we're dealing with budget issues. So we hope to have probably a new letter drafted soon and have more information and more talking points to help the board start communicating our position and then your positions as community members and residents as well. I think I see a hand. Casey?
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there is another committee as well, which is the nominating committee. Michelle did send out a couple of weeks ago the application page. If you, I'm going to ask Michelle to send it out again. If you haven't done it already, please distribute it to communities and contacts. We have a good number of openings, and it's really imperative that we get that disseminated as broadly as possible. So please, yeah, do follow up with that. Thank you.
If you go on our website, there is a link to apply as well if you want to just link it to the Parks Board website.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And Ally and myself will be reaching out to a few board members because we also have a leadership nominating committee that needs to form for the next chair and co-chair. So if you're interested to serve on that committee, please let me know, but I'll be reaching out to folks soon because we need somebody in place by June. And this might be also a good place, and tell me whether or not if it's okay. Thinking about moving the retreat to August. So something for y'all to think about, and with the understanding that we have to go for a recess in July. So maybe not voting this time, but next meeting, if a recess in July makes sense. So we will be ending our fiscal year in June, recess in July, come back in August with the retreat, and then keep it moving from there. So that's the idea. If there's any feedback or thoughts on that, please let me know.
The timeline for the new board members would be that they would be, the interviews are going to be early May for board applicants. We're going to go take that to the council committee at the end of May. Then that will go to full council in early June, where their terms for the new board members will start July 1st for the fiscal year. And we would be onboarding the new board members before the retreat. And so retreat will be their first board meeting, basically.
Sounds good with folks. That is where we're going with it. So moving on, any other questions or thoughts during that? Go
How
ahead.
many applicants have we received so far? Do you have you tracked it?
I have not, I don't have access to that information. Usually, the deadline for the applications is April 20th. That's a Sunday. On Monday, the analyst over at the Office of Community Civic Life, which oversees all advisory bodies, usually tells me if there's only like 10 applicants, he'll ask me if I want to extend the deadline for another week. And I say yes, if it's only 10 applicants. Sometimes we get a few more stragglers. We've extended it before in the past, but sometimes we get something as high as like 20 applicants and I say, we're good for now. So it really depends on up to the deadline, how many we get.
For too long.
And I'll also add that the recruitment is on the government.gov website. So if people are even just looking for jobs, they'll stumble upon it as well, which is great. And it was highlighted in a city newsletter recently. So that was another good boost. And I know that I've been posting it on LinkedIn. I know a few of you guys have liked it and posted it. So.
I believe the other social media platforms that our social media person is also posted on there.
And if you know folks, particularly in District 1, we would love to have you on board. And if you're under 30 and over 50, we will also love to have you. You wanna
But no.
Yeah, we need to diversify. We're doing good. We're doing good on diversity, but there's different types of diversity. So please don't be shy. District 1.
We need some geographic diversity.
Yeah, because District 2 is very strong. Alright, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and we don't have any reports written or anything like that regarding the Portland Parks Foundation. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, let's go to the Portland Parks and Recreation budget. Why can't I talk? Budget presentation and discussion. So this is gonna be the lion's share of our meeting. Take it away.
All right. So this evening, we're going to review City Administrator Mike Jordan's preliminary budget that and gone through recommendations that he released on Friday, February 28th. We've reviewed these with the Financial Sustainability Working Group last month, but wanted to share with the whole board since the cuts have a pretty big impact on programs and services, partnerships, and staff. Our agenda today will touch on Portland Parks and Recreation's budget gap. We'll look at a summary of budget recommendations by division, and we'll share a levy update and discuss next steps in the budget process. Division managers and I began work on the fiscal year 25-26 budget late last summer in anticipation of reductions that would be required to balance our budget. We've worked closely with DCA Szymanski, and she's been briefing City Administrator Jordan along the way. Once our new city council was elected, we spent time briefing the new mayor and councilors on Parks' unique funding model. Our Parks levy makes us very unique in the city. We're one of the only bureaus that has a measure like that that's supporting our work. Please note that Portland Parks and Recreation submitted more than 80 budget packages, but not all were included in City Administrator Jordan's recommendations. Today, we're just going to talk about what was recommended by City Administrator Jordan. And I just want to remind folks that we're all moving through this process with a brand new form of government and a brand new mayor and city council. So the process has been quite different than years past, and we're learning as we go. City Administrator Jordan's preliminary budget recommendations do not provide a balanced budget, but instead provide options to the city council. The mayor and city council are now working with the community and each other on how to shape the recommendations into a budget that supports the city holistically. City Administrator Jordan has indicated that citywide leaders would lead a review of citywide strategies and staffing models in procurement, human resources, technology, budget and business operations, communications, engagement, and equity. Last week, as part of city reorganization work, as I mentioned, CA Jordan shared a new city organizational chart that dissolved Vibrant Communities service area and moved Parks to the Public Works service area. Sort of buried the lead before, sorry about that. Just for your edification, also the Portland Children's Levy and the Office of Arts and Culture are moving to the Community and Economic Development service area. There were a lot of specifics that are still to be communicated, but I wanted you all to know those big changes. all in all, this is a very challenging moment in time for parks, our staff and the community. I've said it before and I'll say it again, there are no good choices here. And they're really just only hard decisions ahead. Turn it over to Claudio.
Or I can do it
Oh,
actually.
you're doing it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Jump in.
all right.
Try to get as much space as I can before.
Yeah. We're assigning stuff to you.
So just talk a little bit about the budget gap. I think some of you have heard this before, but there's an estimated $23 million worth of reductions to balance the budget for June 30th, 2026. So that's next fiscal year. The city administrator recommendations that Director Long just spoke about has about $20.7 million worth of savings from PPNR, and we expect, as the mayor's proposed comes out, we'll learn more, but it will be in this realm of about $23 million to be able to balance the parks budget. We'll learn more with the mayor's budget. We really have two general fund cuts. Our current fiscal year 24-25, 5% general fund cuts that we're having Parks Levy be able to cover, as well as an 8% requirement by the mayor for next fiscal year 25-26. So that totals about $11.4 million of ongoing reductions. And as well as many of you have heard, there's also Parks Levy compression issue with as real estate values go down, especially in the central city. That changes our collections on how much money we collect from the Parks Levy. So that estimate is about $6 million less as well. Expenses that have gone up over the last 3 years. We have about 35% per hour worked for parks. So just like many organizations, inflation has caught up with us as well. And so it's per hour worked is more costly than it was 3 years ago by 35%. And then we have internal service charges within the city. Think about like when we get vehicles or IT or other charges assessed by the city as a whole. For 25-26, we're seeing a 19.6% increase. You'll see in the proposals we're about to roll through that public summer programs will be highlighted for not taking a reduction and delay those reductions till September 1st. So Portlanders can experience a summer in 2025 more similar to what they experienced in summer of 2024. But then those reductions would go into effect September 1st. And so they would be effective for summer 2026, where we wouldn't have a summer like we do this coming summer. And we'll just roll through each division. We'll do a little summary at the end about community feedback, then we can take questions. We can go back to slides if we want.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna run through each of the divisions. I'm gonna give sort of a high level overview of the division. Many of you know this very well, but it's always a good refresher, especially as we talk about each of the reduction packages. So the land stewardship division includes all land management activities at developed parks and natural areas. Land management is divided into 3 units, a west side group to manage developed parks west of the Willamette River, and east side group to manage developed parks east of the Willamette River, and City Nature, which manages natural areas and community facing programs. In addition, the land stewardship team manages turf and irrigation and horticultural services. So July 1 recommended reductions include reducing daily park maintenance and care, several external materials and services packages, reducing administrative capacity, reducing irrigation on passive turf, and 1 minor fleet reduction. As of September 1, recommended reductions are in City Nature programming reductions and eliminations that include the Nature Day Camp, Teen Nature Team, and the Youth Conservation Crew. The Recreation Division is responsible for recreation activities, including community and art centers, the summer free-for-all program, aquatics, sports, urban park and teen programming, as well as specialized recreation services for older adults, people with disabilities, and through the Sons Uniting Neighborhoods program. This division also includes the golf program and Portland International Raceway. In recreation services, the recommendations for July 1st include alignment of our preschool program with Multnomah County Preschool for All. This is good news. Recreation will receive no general fund or levy support under the Preschool for All model, which saves $1 million in general fund levy support. The service hours are approximately the same, but the new model is a 6-hour day minimum, whereas the current model is 2 3/4. So half-day programs. So we're moving from a half day to a full day. Preschool reduces the number of individuals we serve, but it increases the depth of service. We have 154 slots. There are 14 classes in 14 groups within 11 classrooms across 9 facilities. So that's a good news. Other things that we're doing in recreation is we're looking to restructure an interagency agreement that we have with the Portland Water Bureau for care and maintenance of decorative fountains citywide. We're looking to eliminate Teen Collaborative Initiative grant funding, and we'll move to an opt-in printed recreation guide, which will save more than $60,000 in printing costs and lots of trees. Recommendations for September 1st include eliminating Portland Parks and Recreation Sun Community Schools, eliminating youth summer camp programs, closing 1 neighborhood community center. And as I mentioned previously, those neighborhood community centers include St. John's Community Center, Peninsula Park Community Center, and the Montebello Community Center. Notifications have gone out to all neighborhood community centers, but final decisions will be made as part of the budget process. Another reduction in recreation is the elimination of citywide sports and reducing the summer free-for-all events. The Assets and Development Division leads the Bureau's asset management program, long-range planning program, capital design, engineering, and construction of new and renovated parks programs, and the professional repair and maintenance services program for existing park and recreation assets. This division is also responsible for the oversight, preparation, and administration of the Bureau's capital improvement plan. All of Asset and Development's recommendations gap closing measures will begin on July 1 if they become final. In Assets and Development, we're looking to reduce care of assets and facilities with some permanent and trainee staff positions and their associated funding, reducing our funding to support leased vehicles. They're looking to realign the ADA carpenter position from general fund to capital fund. So we'll retain that work, but change the funding source. We'll reduce asset and development managed programs, including our Bureau's workspace program and the natural area assessment program. We'll reduce our planning program funding, which will decrease our capacity to complete studies, park plans, and trail and acquisition work, and reduce staff time for processing non-park use permit processing. In addition, Assets and Development will reduce some staff capacity and planning, eliminate staff training for non-professional repair and maintenance services, PRMS staff, and reduce our capacity to support special projects. Assets and Development will also be taking external material service reductions as well. In the Urban Forestry Division, which is responsible for the planning and management of the city's urban forest and green assets, the division's responsibilities include tree maintenance operations and around-the-clock emergency services for fallen trees in the public right-of-way. Responsibilities also include education and enforcement of Title 11 regulations covering public and private trees. Urban Forestry also develops and promotes forest stewardship among city residents and manages the long-term planning of the city's forest resources. Starting July 1, Urban Forestry will utilize the Urban Forestry Fund to support some programs and capacity. This would be a one-time measure to retain services and positions while the future of the park's operations levy is explored. They will also use more staff time for CIP project permitting and will realign where some staff funding comes from. Urban Forestry will also be reducing vehicle expenses and external material and services similar to other divisions. And as of September 1, Urban Forestry will reduce its community stewardship program, including Youth Conservation Corps, volunteer and partnership programs, communications, and outreach.
Over to me. So Vibrant Community Support Services does all the organizational support services for Portland Parks and Recreation, also the Office of Arts and Culture and Portland Children's Levy. We do everything like finance, property, technology, community relations, media management, workforce development, park ranger program, our safety program, our sustainable future program, performance management. And so you'll see the first bullet here is to identify some additional reductions and efficiencies for the mayor's proposed. So we're working on that right now, and we expect to have something ready for the May 6th or 7th mayoral release of the proposed budget. We also have a reduction of communications and community engagement capacity, and that's largely through staffing reductions. Also a reduction in the finance around financial analysis and the property team, which does reservations and permits and some of our property negotiations, reduction in staff capacity there as well. With the parks levy that was passed, we were able to scale up the number of small grants we're able to give to community-based organizations over time. So similar to some other reductions, that's a one-time reduction that while we wait to see what happens with the renewal of the parks levy, that decision can be changed later, but for now, no more community grants through support services starting July 1st. And then reservation and payment fee schedule increases about a 10% fee increase for those kinds of permits for adults, not for youth.
So I'm just going to cover a couple of items that that fall under the director's office or bureau-wide budget. One thing is our maintenance yard leases were less than originally estimated, so we have some cost savings to help close the gap. Also, Amanda Menjeras, the equity and inclusion manager, has restructured the team as you all are aware. We're thankful for the work that she's done, especially since it will continue to reflect the capacity that's required to continue the good work that the equity and inclusion team has done over the years. The next item is Parks' agreement with Leach Botanical Garden, which is ending this fiscal year. So we'll realize savings from eliminating our pass-through funding to them. Finally, like the others, I've reduced external materials and services in my office's budget. And yeah.
So we thought we'd repeat some information just to queue up your discussion or questions just about the parks levy and community feedback. So here's just some examples of what the parks levy renewal could look like. If passed at a higher level, we've estimated $1.60, so double the current rate. The types of reductions that you've seen for the 23 million, as well as future reductions over the 5-year forecast, could be avoided. Under the current city administrator's proposal and what we understand to be the mayoral proposal to be an 80-cent renewal, it would be order of magnitude about $23 million worth of reductions that you see here. Of course, city council could amend or change what those reductions would be, but to get to balance for fiscal year 25-26, we need to take about $23 million worth of reductions, and then come back the next fiscal year in 26-27 and take another $27 million worth of reductions for a total of about $50 million. Or just to think about it, of the services we provide today, about a 25% reduction in our total service level as a bureau. If the parks levy was not renewed at all, which is like the doomsday scenario, if you will, it would be the $23 million worth of reductions for next fiscal year, but then coming back for $77 million worth of reductions, or if you think about it, about 50% of all the services we provide today. We don't like to think about that last one very long. The parks levy options, so you can kind of see it. Some people are like words, some people like graphics, so we try to show it in different ways. You can see on the left here, the parks levy revenue at the $1.60 in the lime green, the general fund allocation, you can see about $90+ million. So that's what the $1.60 looks like. As you go to 80 cents, you can see the hatched blue line is the service reduction, so about a 25% reduction. And then with no levy, it would be like a 50% reduction. It's just graphically show the same information a different way. And because everyone likes to think about things differently, sometimes rather than services by like personnel, we try to show it this way. Scroll that up a little bit. So you can see the full-time employees, the Portland Clean Energy Fund, directly funded positions in the yellow and the lime green. As many of you know, like we have a very large seasonal casual workforce. So that's what it looks like when we're fully funded at the $1.60 on the left. And then as we take service reductions, again, in the hatch blue, you can kind of see what that would look like illustratively of a 25% reduction or a 50% reduction. And a lot of our expenses on the operating budget really are personnel. We thought it might be good just for your information and for discussion. Sarah could talk about some of the feedback we've gotten from likely voters, but then also some community survey about different themes around the park system.
As we think about sort of what either delivering services could look like, or if we're in a position where we're gonna be reducing services as we are with the, proposed budget that Director Long just reviewed. Lots of people have different values and ways at which they're thinking about what is sort of most critical to provide in terms of those services to preserve or to deliver. So this is just some kind of baseline information that we've shared in different ways over the past, but that we brought together to reinforce tonight. The full, these full surveys and polls are all online. So for those interested, you're welcome to go and dig a little deeper. This is a recent poll that we did in the summer of 2024 of likely voters. So this is specifically tying to kind of what people might be willing to vote for or most interested in voting for in a ballot. Here we've organized them by which things would be most convincing to them. So which things would most likely convince them to vote for a funding measure. And we're seeing a lot of the themes in that poll around kind of basic free access to parks, things that are free for everyone to use in that top one. Also kind of clean, well-maintained spaces. We're definitely continuing to see a strong trend for access to nature and trees. That's been something we've consistently seen in the last 3 polls that we have done. Next slide. Continuing down, seeing climate and climate resilience resonating, another way of looking at trees also, recreation programs, and then we're seeing the positive messages of what something would do resonate a little bit more than kind of a preserving or preventing cuts type message. So that's sort of a voter poll look. Here I'm sharing some information from our last, PPNR's last community needs survey, which was done in 2017. We anticipate that at the end of April, I think we're looking at April 30th right now, we will have the data that we can share from the 2024 community needs survey that wrapped up in December of last year. So we're eagerly looking to see that. That said, some of the same trends from the 2008 and the 2017 held strong. So we think this is still good information until we have that new survey to share. In this question, we asked, it's a little bit small to read on the screen, but we asked people about their usage. If there's things in the park system that they don't use, or things that they use sort of closest to home or be willing to travel for. And here it's organized. The stuff at the top is the stuff that almost no one said they didn't use. So it's the stuff they use the highest, whether it's they would be willing to travel for it or use it if it was close to home. So we're definitely seeing sort of trees, paths, gardens, open grassed areas, trails, natural areas kind of coalescing there on the top. And some more specific types of park features then a little bit lower down on the list.
Good mix.
Yeah, next slide. So this is then a companion piece about the importance, and here we're looking at a list of things that are programs. So moving a little bit away from kind of assets or experiences that you might have out in a park and things you might do in a programmed way. And so here, sort of at the top, we're seeing kind of arts and culture events, nature and environmental programs, fitness, swim. We've continue to hear sort of the high levels of importance for those types of programs. A little bit more towards the bottom, I'll flag the bottom three actually, Portland International Raceway and Golf. Those are actually enterprise funds, so they actually don't receive levy or general fund dollars. They generate their own revenue. So they're a little bit of an outlier in terms of their funding type. But in terms of programming, sort of this is what we're seeing.
So, as many of you know, there's a variety of different opportunities for the community to go to listen to city council deliberations or mayoral presentations, or also opportunities to give written testimony online or to go to public meetings and give testimony. They're very popular. So if you really want to get your 2 minutes and say your piece, show up early. Otherwise, you can always send written testimony, and there, I don't know, last week I looked at it and there was at least 1,000 written testimony already in.
I got there 30 minutes before 2 of them, and I was number 2 and number 17. 30 minutes is a good time to get
There you
through.
go. That's great advice.
There you go.
And so, well, I think this is good information. I really encourage people to go back to the website and get the most current information. It's a dynamic first time ever process for the city council to go through a budget. And so they might be changing some of these dates and times. So just, I would encourage people to go to the website, and we can post that in the chat, and then we just had discussion. So I'm happy to share this again, but this is all in your board packet. And then we, unless you want to say something else, we can just open up. for
No, I
discussion.
want to open up the floor for questions and discussion. We have several division managers with us tonight who can help field questions that might be too specific for me to know the answers for.
Thank you so much. If you can, Michelle, if you can help me with the folks that are on the screen. We're gonna handle these questions in more of a thread. So right now I have the order of Suen, Matt, and then Patty. But if there are like sort of clarifying questions, that way we're not bouncing back and forth. So Suen, you have the floor, go ahead and ask questions.
So there's a lot of information. Also, the reading packet was actually very rich with a lot of hard work that's been behind all the information. We're very focused on parks, and I understand we have a huge budget that we always have to balance. In comparison to the rest of the city bureaus, I've been hearing that we take a big chunk that we have to cut, and yet that money is actually moving into public safety, police. And that's just some information I've been hearing. And is it something that is structured that way, that we basically will have to shrink park so that we're using the same money to actually fund other bureaus? And how is that they don't need to take much of a cut, and why are we? I want to say, when people say public safety, Portland parks contribute to mental wellness and all that good stuff that we are public safety. And I think we have this kind of soft contribution that is not being appreciated. And I hate to cut us so much and just bolster other bureaus, whereas we've been overlooked with the attributes that is so vital in who we are as Portland.
I can try to start, but then Claudio Campuzano is here too, if he
I
wants to
didn't
get.
see him on here.
Yeah.
I saw him.
Is he not there?
No, I'm definitely here.
Oh, wait.
Yeah,
You're
okay,
just listed as
all right,
Todd.
so I'm
Okay,
gonna get
sorry.
started. So, the past council had kind of a hold harmless for Portland Bureau of Emergency Communications, the Portland Fire Bureau, and Portland Police. So, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think the second year of the levy, we took a 5% general fund cut, but so did all general fund bureaus. Last year, we took a 5% general fund cut, so did all general fund bureaus, except for the emergency response and communications bureaus. This year, we're being recommended to have an 8% general fund cut. The city administrator showed what 8% would be in their Mike Jordan's city administrator budget, and then recommend to fully fund it. And so it's like something to watch in the mayor's proposed on like what happens with fire, police, emergency communications. And the last factoid I was gonna say, are we about 11% of the general fund now, Claudio?
I can look that up, but I can't tell you offhand. That sounds about right, though.
Yeah, so just to give you a sense of like, well, I think the communication frame at council is a little bit like, we have housing emergency response, shelter services, we have emergency management, parks are the big ones. I think we're at about 11% of the total general fund, so this is some kind of order of magnitude, but the general sense of what you're saying is still holds true.
I believe it's 10.3% now.
10.3
It was
now.
11.6% in fiscal year 15. So it's gone down a little bit, our share.
So the other bureaus don't have that kind of cut.
Well, for sure, the Water Bureau doesn't, the
Right.
Bureau of Environmental Services doesn't, they're paid by ratepayers, gas tax for transportation, so like,
Isn't that unfair?
well, it's your policy choice as a board to weigh in on
Well,
that.
this is where I wonder, I mean, I kept wondering if we are functioning as an advisory board or if we are listening and understand how hard you work and what is our role and weight here. It seems like we're taking a big blunt of chopping block. The others are not.
I think your assessment is correct.
Thank
And
you.
then what you do with that information, we're not gonna, so you're right, we are taking a disproportionately large cut. Given the fact that there's other bureaus that are being held harmless and who are actually asking for additional funds. That's really the rub. Is
What
that-
can we do as a board if we can make a difference?
Well, I think this is where getting the right language for the letter, how we show up at meetings, the talking points, each board member showing up in the ways that they can and having a united message is within our wheelhouse to do.
And which is the reason why we wanted to come to you all armed with the same information to help inform that advocacy.
I'm gonna move to Matt, unless there is along this thread that somebody wants to add to. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, heavy stuff. Dr. Long Todd, can you speak to how the cuts were informed? Like what were the priorities as it drove you to make certain decisions to keep or cut programs and who was involved in that decision?
So we first received direction from the city administrator and the mayor. Then we received guidance from deputy city administrator, and I'm actually like trying to find my notes so that I can speak to this really well. It's gonna be a little bit off the cuff, but I do have some notes on this. When I worked with the division managers, I made a decision that we would make proportionate reductions across all of the divisions. So every division got that 8% peg, to meet. We talked about identifying mission critical work. And by that, I mean, what do we do that no one else can do? We talked about programs or projects that maybe had just started or hadn't started yet, and whether or not those were areas that we could reduce. We spoke about ensuring as much as is feasible, safety. That was a big concern for us. We always think about services that are mandated by code, like that we can't just stop doing.
And I could just add like how
Yeah.
that then translated to like support services. Support services, like in this organization, it's natural that they would grow as the operating budget grew, so might need some more financial analysis done, might need some more accounting done, more procurement, buy more technology. And then as the organizations get smaller, then it's kind of natural for us to reduce the staffing levels on support services. One thing you'll notice, like that's consistent with what just Director Long said, is like we didn't make a reduction in park ranger program. We didn't reduce any of our staff that promote and support employee safety. But we did take reductions in other places, which someone would argue like our communication is super important, but it's honestly not as important as our employee safety program. We have to make these hard choices. So that's kind of how it played out for support services with the target of you got to get to $23 million with reductions.
Anybody wants to follow that up? Thank you. Ally, you're next.
I think Patty was before me.
You're absolutely right. Patty.
This is more of a general question. So we are going out for a levy in November, not May, correct?
Definitely not May.
Definitely not May.
Right. So I guess this is more like, there's a lot of competing forces because the school bond, which is giant, and then the levy, is there any, we don't really have a choice, I guess. Is there any discussions about that? Because
Like the school bond will be on the May ballot. And
school's gonna be in May and not November, okay.
that's right. And we don't know yet who would be on the November ballot. But the Portland Parks Foundation is leading effort to do like due diligence with the support of like partners like Trust for Public Land to do the political analysis, if you will, and voter projections for November to give that information to council and the mayor. And they need to refer at latest by July 16th for the November ballot. And just like it's from staff perspective, super important. Best way to get through this is to do a referral at some level and get it on the November ballot, because otherwise we're preparing a budget, the January release with $77 million worth of reductions. Like that will be a lot of, we're getting a lot of people to show up for one neighborhood community center and other valued programs now. $77 million is like a lot.
Any clarified questions? Any follow-up questions?
No.
I have a follow-up question regarding that. When the research that you showed, all of this is in before or at the end of 2024, correct? Even the information that we're getting in right now is, I would say, not to be disrespectful, but old in the sense of not really showing the current political situation that we're in right now. And so I guess my question is, because these are budget meetings and so many people are showing up for parks, is there an opportunity to use the testimony as a data set to kind of course correct how people are thinking about the budget cuts regarding parks?
I think, I don't know about as a quantitative data set, although I have heard that like there are people keeping track of like the nature, and that I think the stat I heard was maybe 70% of feedback is about parks in some way or another, parks and recreation. I think though that counselors are listening, and I have heard counselors reflect back what they are hearing in the listening sessions and recognizing, and at least one counselor saying it changed their mind, like hearing some of the testimony changed their opinion around the importance and kind of the criticality of certain types of park services.
But why couldn't it be used as a data set, like based on the participation regarding the budget situation? This many were, the testimony revealed this much percent of folks focused on parks with these particular issues that are coming at it as a way of thinking about it. I guess my concern is that the levy that is being promoted now is not necessarily the levy that it could be based on the real life situation of losing those programs. And I'm wondering is there an opportunity to recalibrate, because the levy, how it's written, would speak to how it's being used. So why still stick with 160 versus $2 versus based on the momentum and the current political situation right now? Is there room for adjustment?
I think there is. Yeah, I mean, I think the forum for that can be, you're talking here, but I encourage you to talk to the Portland Parks Foundation, who's doing that due diligence work. And they're also meeting with city council members. But if we can assist in any way,
Because
we're happy to. That public data set, the comments is open to the public. Any of you can go pull it, counselors can pull it.
and it's not being encouraged necessarily by anybody in the room necessarily saying people to go to it. So it's not necessarily painted in that way as much as a showing of the wants of the folks right now. And then I'll conclude with this is because the letter of what is actually put in the levy could also speak to funding current programs, but also addressing backlog maintenance. Is that correct?
It's possible. So capital could be added to the levy, which it's not now. Right now it's an operating levy, but it could be both a capital and a operating levy. So the 2002 Parks levy had both eligible expenditures in it.
So I feel like we're missing an opportunity to rewrite this. Not to say that that's easy and you don't have 1,000 other things that you're doing right now, but why isn't this being more seriously considered, considering the current political climate?
Well, we're doing the staff work, the due diligence on how you would do that. So we're ready. City council, the community need to weigh in, but we'll give you the technical answer of like how to write a parks levy that would include both capital and operating and different scenarios. And Sarah's done an amazing amount of work. She's been working on this for 6 years. So like,
So I don't want to
but
discount
this
all that
group and
work,
others
but-
need to lean in and be like, what do you want? Right?
Well, thank you for that. Sorry, moving to Ally.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, as it is currently, and Sarah, you spoke to this a bit. Do you think that, or do you have any inclination if council has been swayed at all by the big showing of public support? And do you think that that may reduce the hurt that's coming?
Yes, and yes.
And do you know who's going to be in charge of what programs come back and what's not excluded from, like, sports folks have shown up in droves. Does that mean that the sports program, you know what I mean? Like, how are those decisions
I
going to
think
be
they're
made?
definitely influenced by what they're hearing. Like, there's no question. I think Sarah mentioned it before. I've been also, like, I follow many of them on social media and they're talking about it. They're being swayed, there's no question. We're hearing most about saving the sports program, Sun Schools, and the community center. Those are the three topics that I'm hearing the most about. And that we're getting a lot of questions about, like counselors are asking very specific questions. How much does it cost? How many people work there? Like, what are the they're asking probing questions. So there's definitely an interest. Yes, there's interest. We're sharing information. I think that, we're still trying to figure out how things are working with them. I mean, we've been asked to present at multiple city council committee meetings and have a few more on the books where they want to talk just specifically about recreation and arts and culture at the Arts and Economy. They want us to come to talk about the Ranger Safety and Security Program at the Public Safety Committee. So they're getting into the weeds. I think also, I'll say that not just the council, but also the mayor. So the mayor is hearing these things as well. And, you know, what we're working off of now is not what we're gonna be working off of, you know, in May, early May. So I imagine that the mayor's proposal is gonna look quite different than the city administrator's preliminary.
Does the levy bring anything back? If it were passed at $1.60, does it bring any of, or is it just, does it bring camps back, sun back? Does it bring any of the programs that are being cut in that 23 million back, or does it not? It just moves us forward?
So from a financial perspective, it could cover all $23 million worth of reductions.
Okay.
But then the council needs to pass a budget for which programs they want to fund. So they have flexibility of saying, you know, I want twice as big a sun program, not just some program we have today. So they have the flexibility, the way the levy was written in the past, to do that.
So the levy could compensate for some of these losses, and we could potentially have summer camp and sports programs and things back.
That's right.
Or it could be this bigger, this smaller.
Yeah, okay.
Or this,
And
or
then
this
ad
new thing.
capital would be a big
Yeah.
policy choice as well.
And we know that there is interest in addressing our deferred capital maintenance. They're well aware of how small of an investment the city is currently making in that area. So I'm sure that that's being discussed, but I think, you know, for the board to have those meetings and I think the letter's great, but honestly, I think the face-to-face meetings and really sort of trying to understand what they value. And so much of this work, frankly, is education. And that's one of the reasons why we want to arm you with as much information as we possibly can, so you really understand what's at stake and the impacts, so that when you have conversations with the council and others, you know, you can be more specific, because frankly, they're learning because of all of the advocacy and the, you know, community, and then they ask questions. But it's amazing to me. I mean, there's a lot of information in the budget documents, and you know, I'm not convinced that people are diving deep, and I certainly can understand why. It's a lot of information.
One last thing, and then I promise I will stop. Daily, excuse me, daily maintenance of parks. What does that mean? Is that habitat restoration? Is that just picking, like, emptying garbage and cleaning bathrooms? Like, what does it actually functionally mean? Because it's a real broad statement.
Tanya's here, I think.
Tanya is here.
Sure. To answer in terms of what's in the reductions right now, that is daily care of our developed parks. We have 156 developed parks, so that is daily care includes cleaning restrooms, emptying garbage, picking up litter, checking for safety, dealing with graffiti, putting in work orders for bigger issues, making sure pathways are clear and safe. So that's truly just the daily attention to our developed parks. That does not include the natural areas in terms of what reductions were in the packages. So natural areas are places like Forest Park, Powell Butte. So that the daily cleaning is all for the developed parks. Those with pathways, parking lots, bathrooms, playgrounds.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Tanya.
We have any folks online?
Yeah.
Yes, we have Chris and Casey.
Okay, Chris, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, the staff, for compiling all this information. I think this is a really hard time right now to see all this information compiled in one presentation. My comment touches on a few things people have said, and maybe is less of a question and more of a comment for us to consider as a board. I really want to thank Sarah for the work that she's done on bringing this to the levy, and what Parks Board staff have brought to us throughout the years on trying to find a different fiscal stream to help fund parks. In economic downturns, it's often parks and across cities that I've seen and worked for that often get the cuts first because they're very heavily funded with general fund funds. And it's really unfortunate seeing the timing right now on a national scale with the tariffs and a projected recession that this is when we would be having the discussion around the levy. And I think it's just unfortunate. It's just how life works. But I think it's up to us as board members of what we can do to advocate for more flexible funding streams in the future that are dedicated and restricted, like the gas tax and like other revenue sources that go to other departments that don't get funds cut like they do get. The Parks Department gets that cut because they're so heavily funded with general funds. And so what can it look like in the years in the future for us to also be advocates on the state level when there are initiatives around having that special parks district come back up on what the longevity of those conversations are and working with staff of having flexibility for a levy brought to the ballot in November about having that flexibility for capital fund and operational funding. The other thing that I just wanted to say is I think it's really sobering to see all of the recreation activities that the budget cuts will be to. And I know that there are certain groups of communities that have come to public meetings and engaged around the budget cuts that have a bigger voice. But I'm particularly struck by the ones that affect summer recreation services for children and youth and families, the summer free-for-all, and how this is communicated to the public. I know that these programs really have a huge impact for families that might have smaller incomes and really utilize parks as a source of well-being and support, especially in times of economic downturn on a national level, because they're so accessible to use. And we're going into spring and summer right now. And these programs really play a vital role in shaping young people's relationship to parks and public spaces and help create those lifelong advocates for parks and provide that support to families in the summer months. So what those cuts will mean, not just to families now, but for long-term advocates that are invested in parks in the future. And sorry, that is a very long-winded comment. Those are just some things I wanted to bring and elevate to the board.
Thank you, Chris. I do, if I can dovetail off of what Chris is saying, is there any information that you can gather to speak to the type of losses, like how many kids won't have access to these programs, meals lost, summer learning loss? If we can get those numbers that we can actually put a face on what this means, it could be helpful. And so especially for writing letters and thinking about talking points. So thank you for that, Chris.
We have like a 5 or 6 page like narrative document that shows some of the outputs or outcomes you're describing, how many meals, how many summer camp registrations, reductions that Director Long sent out to all staff. We can send that to the board.
I think we were planning on sending it after this.
Does it say jobs too?
We have been, I'm not sure if that's in there, but we could add it. We have some estimates.
We also have for all of the performance metrics that are reported each year in the budget, we've done a forecast of what those metrics would be.
It will also be helpful to have a reference to the demographics. People who loses the most are the people who tend to be underserved in a lot of ways, and Parks has been able to fill in that kind of very essential holes in some of the people we don't usually hear from.
Right, we don't reliably collect that information. And so I have concerns using data like that. I don't know if it was.
Maybe in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean,
certainly, I mean, listen, our programming generally, we have a target audience and we're very intentional about it. And we do collect demographic, but it's voluntary and people, you know.
Say how many people are using reduced pay.
Yes.
Service, like that kind of thing.
And
which
how
we could
much,
speak
yeah, we
to.
have that information, of course.
Yeah, that might take a work around.
And we have that by race, ethnicity, as well as income.
I think the other thing, if I can jump in, is in February, we were looking at an equity map, right? The heat map with Marty and Brett that showed us,
Yeah.
can that be leveraged to speak to which neighborhoods are getting hit the most, who already are the most vulnerable, that are going to be dealing with even more severe service losses based on these projections?
Yeah, the equity map that she's referring to is it's sort of the next iteration of the equity tool that assets and developers is going to be using for capital project selection. So, and I don't believe it's ours. I believe it is somebody else's. But I mean,
I think some of the reductions we can, like with access discount, we can talk about who's using it, we can talk about, we do have some demographic information for certain types of programs that we could also bring in. I think for reductions that are in like a community center, right? We can talk about the service area for that community center. It would be more difficult for things like or Tanya chime in, but I would imagine like the developed park daily maintenance is going to be more difficult because that's occurring at 156 parks across
over.
town. So in a sort of budget component by component way, we can potentially do that for some.
I think that would
Looks
be,
like, okay.
go ahead.
No, it's just for the small community center, there is kind of a story that started in 2019 where like Hillside and Selwood, which are higher income on average neighborhoods, their community centers don't get direct service anymore. And the other small community centers, Peninsula, St. John's, and Montebello were kept as direct service. Now we're working into that. So like there is a story of where if you look over a decade, probably have been reducing direct services to higher income areas. But that's a more complicated story.
Thank you for that. Casey and then Allison.
Thank you. I've got a statement and a question. And I think they're actually going to end up being repeats because of the most recent conversation. My statement is to thank everybody, all the board members. I think I'm the only retired person in this room. And I really appreciate everybody who's attended meetings, who's provided testimony, who's provided written testimony, who's met with council people. As you know, as you hear, it's important and we're not done. So I really, 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 really appreciate the time that you guys have spent in terms of getting this out. My question actually follows up in the conversation you guys just had, but I have a slightly different take on it. And I wonder if the cuts that have been proposed, do they disproportionately affect certain districts, both in an absolute sense as well as a relative sense? Because I'm sure that $1 taken away from District 1 means a lot more than $1 taken away from District 4. So I wonder if you've got that kind of data at all.
yeah, it is super complicated. I would say that it would be really challenging to isolate that for many of the reductions. Especially when we're talking about reducing a service level across the board, across the city. I mean, the sort of caveats you would need in terms of like acreage of the park and where it's located, like that data analysis is just huge when I think about it.
We did sort like where there is a package that has a specific location.
Right.
We can share that with you if you'd like, where it says, hey, this is in this district. So we have that data. And then many of them are citywide. And so multiple districts. And then like, I mean, if you really want to get into the policy analysis of this, you have to look at the total investment of parks.
Yeah, over time.
So like, go to District 2, there's $100 million commitment to build a North Portland Aquatic Center in District 2? And how do you net that out with the possible reduction of a direct service, but having a nonprofit operate St. John's Community Center? Like, that's super complicated.
Maybe I
But
can.
we can give you the data of which ones are like district specific,
But there's so few.
but then I
I
don't know.
can, I would
But-
say, if I can add, I think, as Director Long outlined, when we were asked to provide reduction packages, we did that across the board. Not everything moved forward, and there are some areas in the work of land stewardship where we do see impact in certain areas of the city comparatively, and I think there's a lot of larger goals that are associated with that, but that would be in the detail that we're providing.
I mean, maybe I can just reduce it to one program, because the Sun program is a very hot program if you listen to the testimony. And if we're cutting the program, but there's more participants in District 1 than in District 4, which I kind of assume there is, then that would show a disproportionality and an equitable, cut to District 1.
That's currently the case for land stewardship.
Just going on that, on Casey's question, I would assume for anyone who signs up for sports or summer camps, you have their addresses. So that data could be pulled to see how many students, how many kids from X district based on the addresses when they sign up for a more robust program like that, correct? So you could see where your signups are largely coming from, and maybe it helps the case, maybe it doesn't, but it is an interesting question.
Because it could be triangulated with like whether or not they have free lunch or not, right? To speak to income, household income for those programs.
I don't think you don't verify that
Not
for
for
free
free
lunch and
lunch.
play.
No,
Free
but
lunch and play.
if you look at the zip code and not to say that you need to, open up a whole data service to serve us, but looking at particular zip codes, you'd probably be able to understand the income level and the free lunch situation to extrapolate on which kids are gonna be more impacted.
I mean, we're only offering free lunch and play in geographic areas that have been identified as having that need. So that's already happening. So it's all, it's based on free lunch program that the school district offers. So it's all federally based.
Which is another thing, if it's federally based on what is going
Oh,
on. what
there's
does that
gonna
mean?
be cuts.
Yeah.
That program is being cut by PPS. So the county's looking at cuts at some schools. Like, we're not doing this alone, like in a vacuum, believe me, and I think that is, they're not talking about it, but I think that's
But maybe we should talk about that.
but it's not ours to talk about. Like, we know that, like, I don't know, Maxwell, I don't know if you have anything to share about this, but we know that the county is struggling to fund Sun schools, right? And we know that there's gonna be less free lunch and place sites in the parks this summer. And, so it's not, I guess my point is that it's not just us struggling to continue to fund these
But
things.
the message to the city council will be much more on a global view, and it's impacting the communities directly, and it's not whether or not we can balance our budget, is the end result. It's dire.
Yeah, well, we've talked with when we're communicating with our Sun School partners, we're in 4 school districts. And then through that communication during their processes that they have, where we had our own budget process to come into alignment for our budget. So they all have impacts, but they were all base for things in order to reach that. And so committed to open and collaborative communication about where we were at with those pieces. But
I don't know that the county has reached out to us directly, or the city council or the mayor, or like, I mean, they have relationships. I don't know what they've communicated with them, but we know that everyone is struggling. I mean, just read it in the papers.
I guess my concern is that the compartmentalization might prevent us from seeking out more holistic solutions. Allison, you have the floor.
Thanks. This is a question more about the city budget process. So that last slide that was shared. So May 7th, the mayor presents the proposed budget. Then there's 4 budget committee work sessions of the city council. Are those all opportunities to shift or tweak what the mayor has proposed?
Well, they're gonna come up with amendments and then they'll vote at full council, not at committee, but they might move amendments from committee to the full council for a vote.
And so with so many cooks in the kitchen now, 12 folks, like what is that structure of decision making? How does that vote work? Is it majority? Is there consensus? Maybe you could share a little more about that.
Yeah, so the mayor's proposed, so there's advocacy now to the mayor's proposed, both for you to go to council. So they can speak to the mayor on what their desires are, and then the mayor, go to the mayor, or the mayor proposed for May 7th. And council will have a series of meetings where they'll be coming up with their amendments. I mean, in theory, 7 members of the council could disregard the entire mayor's budget and create their own. They won't do that because they don't have the technical capability staff to do that, but they could do that. So they can do whatever they want, 7 members on the council, and that can be very small changes to changing the whole budget. And that then is ultimately approved by 3rd week in May as like a structural budget, June 11th and 18th is like finalized. They get narrower and narrower because we actually have to land a balanced budget, get it in the system and have it operational for July 1st.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess in that case where, hypothetical 7, council people go off in a different direction, like how does that ultimately get wrangled in?
They vote until they get 7. So if there's like a 3 decision thing and it's like 4 said yes,
Bring
3
snacks.
said no, 2 said maybe, 1 said I'm
So they
not
just-
voting. They're gonna keep doing the rounds of voting until they get 7 yeses or
Mayor
7
can be a
no's.
tiebreaker vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much influence does Michael Jordan have at that point?
He doesn't vote. It's just like staff.
Isn't he's the one kind of decided that
At this point, it's the mayor's proposed. So it started as the DCA's, the city administrator's preliminary budget. That's what we're discussing now. It'll go through these machinations. And then in May, the mayor will put out a proposed budget. And then it'll go through some more conversation, council and community. And then in June. Sorry.
But
Yes,
he's also
June.
the one who influenced the imbalance of parks taking a bigger cut than the other bureaus, right?
Well, the city administrator reports to the mayor, so the mayor's owning, and taking this preliminary budget and then taking all this input. And then gonna direct us to yes, do that, et cetera. It'll be part of his proposed, and then that'll go through the same sort of process.
So these amendments that may take place, is this an opportunity like for the public to potentially influence amendments
Sure.
that get made? So it seems like these are critical meetings for us to attend and for us to get this information out there.
And as we said at the beginning of the meeting, for the fund and levy strategy committee, ad hoc committee is meeting tomorrow. If that's something you want to be a part of, you can definitely join us. It's tomorrow at 10, I believe. Zoom call. We can't have more than 6 because of quorum issues. I think the other part, if folks have been following these meetings and some of the criticism that has come out of from the council members is that they don't have any numbers. And so a lot of this is kind of murky. A lot of it is, I think the criticism is that it's in narrative form. And so they can't necessarily see what cloud of money is being moved from one place or the other. And I don't know if that's gonna get cleared up, but I would say one of the things that we could push for as residents, as community members, is having a more clear process. It's something that's hard to like put on a very new group of folks in a new governance system, but that's not something that that is something that we can ask for, is for transparency and having those numbers and having the data in front of us to make those, help us understand the process and for us to make decisions on where we want to put our energy in around testimony or what have you.
I will note that once the mayor's proposed budget goes forward and they do the work sessions with council, there's not a place for public testimony like there was with the budget listening session. There's opportunity to submit a budget comment form. But as far as like public testimony, kind of voice, like in person voicing your opinion, that has since mostly passed from what I understand, correct?
I think that's all something that can be commented on, that why aren't we getting a say, or why isn't the public being in conversation throughout the whole process? A long letter if we put all of that in there, but as individuals is what we can ask for, right? And so again, thinking about those talking points. I do want to say that we're at 6:41. I'm not sure. Okay. Realistically,
Can I dovetail off that for?
yes, and then I'll ask my question.
Or it's more of a comment. I've been thinking for a while now that last year we decided we wanted to be a more advocacy board. And I think there's a lot of questions and training that could be done for our board on what that means and what strategies we can implement. And so just thinking about our the August or, you know, whatever the retreat, how like providing tools, and I hope folks I know who could come in and potentially do a training, and I don't know what that means for parks or if that's, I don't know what that looks like, but I think that if we want to continue on this route, having some solid training and advocacy and how we can move through a system, because it really is knowing how to move through a system. It is, how do you kill an amendment, right? How do you move through? What's the timing? How do you do all of that? Are very specific skill sets that I think that this board could really benefit from. And the timing with so many new folks coming on could be really good for August.
I added it to the parking lot of possible retreat.
So I have a question that is outside of but alongside this question, and looking at the presentation around park closures, what does that actually mean or look like?
And who makes that final decision?
Like what does a park closure mean?
Sorry, where did you see this?
Yeah, I thought I saw this in the presentation, or is it just reductions in service, but there's not an actual closure around parks?
Correct.
Okay, only
Community
closure,
centers.
is only closure, possible closures around community, so building. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. It's like, I was reading this, it's like, how does one do that? Put a fence around and say you can't go on to the grass or something?
So who makes that decision? Which one of the three centers? Who
Council.
is responsible with?
I mean, the mayor will propose on May 7th, if any, or one, or two, or three, or five, or whatever he wants. And
So
then-
would they ask parks and say, okay, here are three, do you recommend one particular one? Or we are neutral, we don't say anything?
We provide them with information, so they might ask, you know, like I said before, attendance, what programs, how many FTE, what is the overall cost? They might look at the district, right? So it's all of those things. I will note like Montevilla and Peninsula, both have pools associated with them, sort of changes the dynamic. Montevilla is a quarter of a mile from East Portland Community Center. Like, these are things that, you know, they're asking those questions, they're doing they're definitely looking into those things, and they're hearing from community. I know that you know, for each of those listening sessions, many of you were there, you heard. Rallying cry.
Casey on screen.
Casey, please go ahead.
So, sorry, it's a procedural question, which is basically what's next. And the question is what's next for the board. I would not, as individuals, I would not stop going forward, commenting and going to meetings. But as a board, our chair or vice chair cannot make a statement that she is representing an opinion or policy of the board unless the board has voted on it beforehand. So I note that we've got a meeting on May 13th, which is after the mayor releases his budget and kind of in the middle of when council is having work sessions. But I didn't know if we wanted to try to craft some type of position at this stage, or maybe the group that's meeting tomorrow wants to go back and maybe send an email to the board members regarding, do they all agree to this position?
So maybe put a motion down for us to move forward in that way.
Correct. Yeah, that's the other option.
Casey, do you want to put that motion forward? You want to start?
I don't know I don't know what to say except for we don't want this. We want it fully funded, you know.
So we did put a motion forward that the ad hoc committee dealing with the levy would craft the letter. And so I guess we can put a motion forward of augmenting the letter to include the current budget situation within the letter and have it made available to the board online could we do an online vote?
You can vote by, yeah.
We can do an email
Yeah.
thread vote.
Yeah, email thread vote.
Yeah.
Okay, so to craft a letter that combines the current budget crisis, I'll call it that, and levy letter to, I guess we'll bring a draft forward to the board for a vote. I'll email.
If I can ask, why are you combining it with the levy, since that's not upright?
So, and I'm trying to find the language. So are we speaking just to the budget cuts? Are we just talking about a budget letter? Because we originally were instated with focusing on a levy letter.
I think there's value in having the levy at least mentioned and wanting the council to move it forward for, you know, November. It doesn't have to be the main piece of it, but I think that could be in it. And then if we want a separate levy letter, I think that's good. But I do think it's hard to divorce the two.
Yep.
So to have, yeah.
So putting a motion forward for the funding and levy strategy ad hoc committee to craft a letter that speaks to both the budget crisis and the levy opportunities.
160 or 80 cents or $2, what are we talking about?
We will craft that letter, bring the letter forward in draft form via email for the board to vote on it. And we will welcome any friendly amendments.
Can you clarify the timing on that?
Ooh, we're meeting tomorrow. We will have it before the next board meeting.
So this
Well,
is
it's
gonna.
gotta be.
It's gotta
this is
be.
gonna-
Before May 1st.
Just gonna precede the mayor's budget. in
I
other
would
words.
just say that the mayor is
gotta
gonna be
do
doing
before.
it now, so I would say we want it in the next week. We want it by tax day or ish, that would be, which I know is fast.
Right.
But that's
So
what like,
what's the date? To have it available to the board, because that might be also just for them to be ready to look for it on that day,
Monday's the 14th.
April
Day.
20th, which is a Sunday.
Keep
Is that
it-
too late?
Keep it short and concise and punchy.
Do the 9th.
Yeah, I would say if we can get it to the board by a week from today, the 15th, and then the board has till the end of the week, we want the mayor to be able to incorporate our feedback into the budget.
With the understanding, we don't need line item changes. We're not looking for tinkering for language. We're looking for confirmation on a clear message. That's what you're gonna be voting on in the letter, not wordsmithing. Thank you.
And staff can be helpful at looking over and making sure we're factually accurate and all of that, right? Correct?
Absolutely. All right, that's a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Yeah, Michelle, however you can craft that language that to make it make sense.
Who moved first, sorry?
That was Matt.
Matt seconding it. All those in favor? Please raise your hand.
Motion
I
is
wanna,
carried. Motion is
I want to
passed.
thank Ally for joining our committee.
Yes. Put in a lot of work. Any of those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, looks like that passed. We have work to do, folks, so I'm gonna see y'all tomorrow morning at 10. Director Long, please go ahead.
Just a question, do you have, or do you want, if we can make it happen, staff to attend that meeting tomorrow?
Please. If staff could attend, I think that would be welcome, along with whatever data you can give us.
What time is the meeting?
10 a.m. I will be sending the Zoom out tonight. Todd, go ahead.
I said one other request, if Casey, I feel like Fezziwig might be a good forum to like consolidate for staff what data requests you want. I feel like there are a lot of ideas kicked around today, but if people want to send it, are you still chair? Fezziwig?
Yes, I'm still
All
there.
right. If you're willing to like have people send like questions or data requests to Casey, and then we can kind of triage those as a team. Like, I feel like there's a lot of ideas said tonight, which would sound great, but I'm not sure which ones we should prioritize running down. That would be
Yeah,
helpful.
And there'll be more questions tomorrow, and then everybody know, for those who don't know, the Fezziwig or Financial Sustainability meeting is
sorry.
actually that's all right, but on Thursday, so it's
Yeah.
it's one day after another.
Right, so maybe on Thursday, we'll walk out of that meeting as staff, like, here's our to-do list, and then we can get it back to you.
Thank you. Just a really quick time check. We are at 6:52. Did we have any public comment by any chance? Nope. Okay, so we can keep on going. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Director Long.
Sarah has confirmed that she's available tomorrow, so if someone can send the calendar invite, that would be great, and hopefully we can help you all.
Much appreciated. Michelle?
I know I said earlier that the opportunities for public testimony technically related to budget meetings is ended. However, there is a council meeting on April 16th, which is the day after tax day. For all general public comment at council, because council only meets on the first and third Wednesday of the month. April 16th's council meeting would start at 6 p.m. So if anyone wants to make a public testimony comment, I believe that is your chance to do it before the mayor's proposed budget.
Thank you,
Just saying,
Michelle.
because you can talk about anything. They really do talk about anything during this.
Thank you.
But sign up early.
Yes.
At least 30 minutes, right?
Well, that was. the
Sign up as soon as you decide to attend. I don't
Online.
know if this turnout for April 16th will be full. It might, because they only allocate a certain amount of time. At the D2 budget listening session, it was so full, they wouldn't even take online public comment.
Yeah.
It was all in person.
And there were 3 overflow rooms.
Yes, Four. I was in one of them, so.
Which, just on that with Harborton comments, you can sign up on Friday, so this Friday, and then sign up in advance, because I'm assuming that one is going to be really busy too.
Bring a snack.
Many. I eat the whole board.
I'll add also that for full city hall based council meetings, that usually there's a room here in the Portland building for overflow as well. So if folks wanna be in person, but not quite in person adjacent.
And I wonder with that, like, for folks that might have disabilities that being in such a crowded spot, they're losing opportunities to give testimony because they are not physically in person. Have they talked about?
For
But
full
they do-
council,
they
you
do
can
in
give.
They do virtual.
Yeah, for full
Okay.
council, you can give virtual testimony. It's
Okay.
just the concern with the District 2 budget listening session, because there's so many in-person folks, they decided to prioritize the in-person folks and not
Over.
give the folks tuning in online the opportunity to give public testimony.
And that won't happen with council, is that what you're saying?
We don't know how they will do things depending on how many people show up, and they might show up and they might not. Sometimes we get 2 public comments, sometimes it's a full.
And I have heard counselors say if someone, like they've minimized time, like generally it's 3 minutes, but they've minimized it if their meeting is going over. And if folks don't have an opportunity, they're always invited to send their testimony in writing. So I don't think they ever really wanna say no, but it's challenging.
Regarding testimony strategy, if you're in person, are you able to pass your minutes on to somebody else, maybe 3 people?
I don't
Have a
think so.
longer time?
No,
or
they
is
give,
it
they're
strict
pretty
on-
specific with the timer. I think but with the D2 budget listening session, it was, the idea was doing 2 minutes per person, but because there were so many, they gave people 90 seconds. So if you have something to say, make sure that you have a part that cuts off at 1:30, so say all the important stuff first.
I've
Just
seen,
in case,
I've seen some city council meetings that it goes down to 1 minute.
yeah,
So
so
prepare a 2 or 1 minute,
yes, absolutely.
especially if you stutter and need to warm up a little bit. I'm just looking at the time. It is 6:56. Any last thoughts? Questions? Gwen, go ahead.
This has nothing to do with what we just talked about. One of the Mount Tabor, Friends of Mount Tabor, member mentioned that the picnic shelter is no longer gonna be able to repurpose the fallen trees. Is that true? And if so, is there any way some part of that wood can also be repurposed on site? And what happened to those
I
logs?
can answer that because I learned about this recently. So when we went to salvage the wood, we could not salvage large enough pieces that could be used structurally for the building, right? They just, however, we do have pieces that are currently being processed. And I will be requesting that they be utilized in some decorative or interpretive fashion. Because I think
Or
it's.
benches and tables?
Right, so whatever it is, but I will be making that request. And so, yeah, so we just found out like the pieces weren't big enough. We can't assure structural soundness in terms of having it as a part of the structure. But I think there is an opportunity to utilize them in other ways. Thanks.
Thank you so much, staff.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. We're gonna go ahead and conclude the meeting at 6:58.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Everyone, good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.